Hi my dear students, welcome you all to this video. This video I'll be giving you a brief introduction into the geometric design of railway track, and I'll be covering mainly four things. The first one is I'll be giving a general introduction into the geometric design of railway track, and I'll be discussing the various features that we will see in this. And then we will see the horizontal curve, the radius of horizontal curve, and how that is being connected to the degree of the curve. And third one is we will be discussing about the super elevation. So what is super elevation? How that is being provided for railway track? How can we get the equation for that? How we will get a theoretical super elevation, and then we will discuss what is the actual super elevation. So the difference between that becomes the Kant efficiency. So these are the portions that I am planning to cover in this video. Welcome you all to this video. So before going into the details of geometric design, first and foremost thing we have to keep in mind is the alignment. So the alignment of roadway we have seen in transportation engineering 1. In a similar way, the alignment is important for the railway track also. So what is this alignment? The direction and position given to the central line of a railway track on the ground is what is called as the track alignment. Okay. The horizontal alignment, it includes the straight path, the width and the deviations in width. It also covers the horizontal curve. Then vertical alignment. Vertical alignment of a railway track includes changes in gradient and the vertical curves that we are providing. All these details will be covered under the vertical alignment. So why it is important? A new railway track should be aligned very carefully, as improper alignment would result either in the capital loss in initial cost of construction, or it may lead to a recurring loss in the maintenance, and it can, if the alignment is not proper, it will result in the increased vehicle operating cost. So we have to do the alignment very carefully. So what is the necessity of geometric design? Do we need to provide a Paka geometric design, or can we simply lay the track? So if we go and see the details of derailment, it can happen due to three reasons. One is due to the track defect. Another one can be due to the vehicular defect, like the rolling stock. If there is some damage in that, that may lead to accident. The next can be due to the operational defect, like we always try to have only one train in a particular segment. So if accidentally two trains happen to travel at the same segment, that may sometimes lead to accident if they are moving in the opposite direction, or maybe in the same direction also it may lead to accident. So these are the main reasons for accident. So when we consider the civil engineer, we are mainly concerned about the track defect because we are designing it. So we should be aware of the reasons of these track defects and how to remove these defects so that no derailment takes place. So railway track should be designed suiting to the load and speed of the train and meeting the safety and economy requirements. So let's focus on the track defects. So what are the different type of track defects that can be seen on a straight track as well as on a curved track? So in the case of straight track, the train can derail due to the defective cross levels. For example, if the two rails they are not at the same level, uh, that may lead to the derailment. Or if the alignment is not proper, that can also lead to um, accidents. And if the gauge is not uniform, or if the joints are not being properly fixed, or if the rails are not properly fastened to the sleepers, or if the ballast thickness is not sufficient to embed the sleeper, all these may lead to the reason, or all these can be the reasons for track defects in a straight track. Whereas if we move on to the curved track, what can be the reasons? So obviously we know super elevation need to be provided when it is negotiating a circular curve, and if the radius is not proper, or if the train is traveling at a higher speed than the designed super elevation, or if the wheel loads are unequally distributed on both the rails. So these may be the reason for track defects on a curved track. So if all these components need to be properly designed, the possibility of derailments due to the defects in the track can be avoided. So we have seen the different causes for accidents or derailment, and we have identified track defect as one of them. So which necessitate the importance of geometric design. So the need for proper geometric design of a track arises because of the following considerations: to ensure the smooth and safe running of trains, to achieve maximum speeds, to carry heavy axle loads, and also to avoid accidents and derailments due to a defective permanent way, to ensure that the track requires least maintenance, and also for the good aesthetics, a proper geometric design is required. The various features to be designed under geometric design include the horizontal curves, the transition curves, that is the connection between the straight track and the curved portion, and the gradient, the different types of gradients, the grade compensation. And under the horizontal curves comes the radius of the curve and how that is connected to the degree of the curve. Then we have to see the amount of super elevation to be designed, and in some situations we may not be able to provide the maximum super elevation that is according to the design. So then we may reduce the super elevation. So there will be a difference between the maximum required and the actual provided, which becomes a Kant efficiency. And there can be negative super elevation, because if the tracks are deviating in two different directions, so there can be negative super elevation. Then again we have to see, based on all these factors, what should be the safe speed on curves. So these were the different features that we will see under the horizontal curves. So the types of curves, it can be horizontal curves or vertical curves. Horizontal curves are mainly provided when there is deviation in the alignment of the track, and it will be connected by a transition curve of circular or parabolic shape at both the ends. Then there can be a vertical curve when there is change in gradient, and usually they are parabolic in shape. Curves are introduced to bypass the obstacles or to connect between the obligatory points, and also to provide a easily transverse gradient. Okay, so the different types of curves or general classification of curves include a simple curve, which is an arc of a circle. There can be compound curve where it composed of two or more simple curves joined. They may be of different radius. Then there can be parabolic curve used for usually mainly used in the case of vertical curves. Its advantages can be easily laid by offset method. And another one is a transition curve, which acts as a transition between the straight track and the circular portion. So now let's focus mainly on the design aspects of horizontal curves. The various elements to be designed include the radius, super elevation, Kant efficiency, negative super elevation, and based on all these, what should be the safe speed with which the trains can run. So let's see this in detail. In the case of railway, we generally provide circular curves, and its speciality is, as we all know, each curve should have the same radius at every point of it. So the radius and the degree of curve, the relation between that is being discussed in this slide. Now, degree of the curve is defined as the angle subtended at the center by a chord of arc length 100 feet. So this 100 feet is equivalent to 30.48 in meters. So the degree of the curve is defined as the angle subtended at the center by an arc length or chord length of say 100 feet. So every curve can be defined by either by its degree or by its radius. So once the degree is given to you, how to find the radius, so that we will see now. So we can say like degree is arc by radius, or we can say like d by 30 is equal to 360 by 2 pi r, or when putting all these values we finally get the degree is equal to 1750 by r. So if you want the radius in meters, for a 1 degree curve, the corresponding radius will be 1750 meters. And if that we need in feet, it will be 5730 feet. American Railroad consider 100 feet chord, 1 degree angle. So for every 100 feet of arc, bearing changes by 1 degree. Then we have to see what is the limiting factor for this radius and degree. So we usually try to avoid sharp curves. So what is the peculiarity of sharp curves? Sharp curves are the one which has minimum radius or which will be having maximum degree. So usually we try to avoid curves because it has got certain problems like the working of train gets seriously affected when it is traveling through a curved portion, because we may forced to reduce the speed of the train, we may forced to reduce the weight of it, and the chances of derailment is more in the case of circular portion than on a straight portion. Then the running of trains is not smooth due to unequal distribution of load on both the rails, and there can be chances of wear and tear. So because of which we have to provide extra strengthening at the curved track. So because of all these reasons, we may try to avoid curve, but sometimes we are forced to provide curve because of these obligatory points. So if we are providing curve, what should be the limiting factor, or what should be the limiting value of radius as well as the degree of the curve? So as I told you, we try to avoid sharp curves as far as possible. So sharp curve is a one which has a minimum radius with a maximum degree. So the limiting value, the maximum degree of curve that can be provided, which depends upon the gauge. Like we have seen three gauges in Indian Railway, like narrow gauge, meter gauge and broad gauge. So this maximum degree of curve that we can provide, it varies with the gauge. Another one is, it again varies with the wheelbase. For example, if we consider the circular curve portion, is a curve. So if the train, the wheelbase of the train, okay, so this much becomes the wheelbase of a train. So if the degree of the curve is large for the length of the wheelbase, then the vehicle does not run freely around the curve, which is liable to derailment. Okay. So if the degree is too high or the radius is too small, then the train or the length of the wheelbase, it cannot run very slow around this curve, which can lead to derailment. So that is one limiting factor for the degree of the curve. And another one can be the sharpness of the curve. So in the case of sharp curve, the greater effort is required by the engine in hauling the vehicles that on streets. So in the case of sharp curve, as we all know, the super elevation is indirectly proportional to the radius. So in the case of sharp curve, the maximum, the super elevation will be maximum. So that again lead to the super elevation is limited to keep the stability of vehicles on the curved track. So if it goes beyond a certain limit, then we have to restrict the speed accordingly. So because of all these factors, we have a limiting value of the degree of the curve. So broad gauge, it is 10 degree, meter gauge, it is found to be 16 degree, and narrow gauge, the maximum degree of the curve can go up to 40 degree. Accordingly, the sharpness of the curve by means of radius, we can say, like in the broad gauge track, the minimum permitted radius should not go below 175 meters, whereas in the case of narrow gauge, the minimum radius can go up to 44 meters. So from this we can see, like narrow gauge, we are able to provide sharp curves when compared to that of broad gauge. That is why narrow gauge tracks are mostly favorable for hilly terrain. The concept of super elevation we have already studied in the case of roadway. So when train moves round a curve, it is subjected to centrifugal force acting horizontally at the center of gravity of each vehicle radially away from the center of the curve. So this increases the weight on the outer rail, and to counteract the effect of centrifugal force, the level of the outer rail is raised above the inner rail by a certain amount to introduce the centripetal force. So this raised elevation of the outer rail above the inner rail at a horizontal curve is called as super elevation. So the term cant is frequently used as a synonym for super elevation, so don't get confused with that. But truly speaking, cant should be used to represent the angle of the transition spur. So let's see how this super elevation is going to affect the operation of train. Okay. So why the super elevation is provided? If the train is running on a circular curve which is not super elevated, then the weight on the outer rail increases. So that may lead to the wear and tear of the outer rail. That can also lead to may lead to derailment also. So to prevent that, we are providing this super elevation of cant so that the train can travel at higher speeds. So mathematically speaking, objective of providing super elevation make force of reaction equal at both the rails and perpendicular to the track. So this resultant force of this centrifugal force and the weight. Okay. So this resultant force become perpendicular to the track, thereby the weight of the train get equally distributed on both the rails. So that is the main reason of providing super elevation. The inner rail is taken as the reference rail and it is maintained at the original level, whereas the outer rail will be raised with respect to the inner rail, and usually it is denoted by E. Inner rail, which is kept as the reference rail, is also known as gradient rail. So this will, by providing super elevation, it will equalize the weight on either rails. The objects of providing super elevation, one is to introduce a centripetal force for counteracting the effect of centrifugal force. This will result in the faster movement of trains on curves, and it also prevents the chances of derailment and reduces the wear and tear, and also it will reduce the chances of creep. It again provide equal distribution of wheel loads on both the rails so that there is no tendency of track to move out of position. And it also reduces the wear and tear, as I already discussed, and wear and tear of the equipments can also be reduced, thereby there will be savings in the maintenance cost. So these all shows the need for providing super elevation on curves. So here you can see the curve is moving to the right hand side. So what about the centrifugal force? The centrifugal force will be acting towards left. Okay. So what is the purpose of providing this super elevation? So the main object of providing super elevation is to provide even and smooth running track to ensure comfortable ride and also to ensure safety of the passengers and the goods transported. Okay. So when the train is moving to the right hand side, the centrifugal force will be acting radially outward to the left hand side. So in order to counteract the effect of centrifugal force, we have to raise the outer edge with respect to the inner edge. So here if you see, this becomes the outer rail and this will be the inner rail. And here again you can see another rail here which is known as the check rail. So what is the purpose of providing check rail? It is to strengthen the track on the circular portion. This check rail is provided. So this will be the gauge. What is gauge? Gauge is the clear distance between the inner phase or the running phase between two rails. So this becomes the gauge. So the amount by which the outer rail is raised with respect to the inner rail becomes the super elevation or E. So let's find a relationship, or let's try to get a relationship between super elevation, the gauge, the radius with which, the speed with which the trains are running, and also on the radius of circular curve. So what are the different factors here? One is the weight of the vehicle, Another one is the speed of the vehicle. If it is small v, it is meter per second, and capital V represents the speed in kilometer per hour. Then r is the radius of the curve in meters, g is the gauge of the track, g acceleration, small g is acceleration due to gravity, alpha is the angle of inclination of this track, this is alpha, and s is the length of inclined surface. So the length of inclined surface becomes s, whereas g becomes the gauge length. So let's try to get a relationship between these things. So we have already seen what is centrifugal force, which is mv square by r. So instead of mass, we can put that as weight by g. So the centrifugal force become wb square by gr, and it will be acting radially outward. So if this is here, we can see the outer rail is raised with respect to the inner rail, so from which we can say that the train is moving to the right hand side, so the centrifugal force will be acting to the left hand side. So we can resolve the forces, the various components of the centrifugal force and the weight. We can resolve it along this inclined surface. We can say F cos alpha is equal to W sin alpha. So from this particular triangle, the outer rail portion comes here. This is the inner rail portion, and the outer rail is raised with respect to the inner rail by an amount of E, which is a super elevation, and alpha becomes the angle of inclination. S is the inclined surface, and G becomes the gauge. So from this, what we can write about cos alpha? Cos alpha will be the G by S, and sin alpha will be E by S. So when substituting here, we can find what is E. It becomes GV square by GR. Or when substituting G to be 9.81, finally we are getting, and also converting here V is in meter per second, and considering that to be in kilometer per hour, finally we get the equation for super elevation to be GV square by 127R, where E is in meters, the gauge is again also in meters, the radius in meters, whereas V is in kilometer per hour. So what is the value of G? That again depends upon the gauge. For broad gauge, you have to substitute 1.676. For meter gauge, it will be 1 meter. And for narrow gauge, it is 0.762 meters. So you have to substitute these values for G, and you will get the super elevation for each of these gauges. For equation of super elevation, we have derived it is GV square 127R, provided E will be in meters. But usually E is represented in centimeters. Then the equation becomes GV square by 1.27R. Then for a broad gauge track, if we substitute G to be 1.676 meters, we will get the corresponding equation for super elevation. For broad gauge, it becomes 1.315 V square by R, that too in centimeters. Then again, if we substitute G to be 1, we will get the corresponding equation for super elevation in meter gauge track. And if we substitute the gauge to be 0.762 meters, you will get the corresponding equation for super elevation for the narrow gauge track. So in all these equations, what are the factors that depends, or what are the factors that influences the value of super elevation? One is the gauge, obviously. Another one is the radius. So as the radius increases, the super elevation reduces, or if the curve becomes more sharper, the radius reduces, thereby the super elevation increases. And another important factor is the speed with which the trains are running. So my question to you is, so what value of V should we design the super elevation? So there can be trains running at different speeds. Say one train, it is a passenger train, that's considered a circular curve very near to the station where it is stopping. So the train may be running at a speed of say 10 or 20 kilometers per hour. Whereas if you consider the expressway, if it is a local station, it won't stop there. So those trains will be running at its maximum speed. So it may be 80 or 100 or 120 kilometers per hour. So there can be another trains which is running in midway between these two. So for which speed should we design the super elevation? Should we design that for the minimum speed, or should we design that for the maximum speed, or should we design that for the average speed. So that is the next challenging factor, the speed for which the super elevation to be designed. So let's see the variation in super elevation with speed. So for a radius of 250 meters, let's see for what is the super elevation for 90 km per hour, it comes to be 42.6 centimeters. Whereas if the trains are traveling at 60 km per hour, then the super elevation required is 11.5 centimeters. When the trains are running even slower, say 30 km per hour, then the super elevation is very less, it is only 2.16 centimeters. So from 30 to 90 km per hour, difference of 60 km per hour, you can see a variation of 40 centimeters in the super elevation. So at a particular route, we cannot always say the trains are running always at 90 km per hour, or the train will always be running at 60 or 30. So the train can be running at different speeds. So which of these super elevation values should we then select? Because if we are not properly design it, that may lead again to accident. So this need to be carefully maintained. Super elevation is directly proportional to the square speed. So as v increases, super elevation also increases. So let's see the factor on which this depends upon. So there can be the maximum speed with which trains run, there can be the lowest speed, and there can be an average speed. So equilibrium super elevation is the one which we are designing for the average speed. So when we are designing it for the equilibrium one, say for example 60 is the average speed of trains running in a road, then the equilibrium super elevation becomes 11.5 centimeter. Then what happens if the train which runs at a speed higher than that? Okay, for that the required one becomes the required super elevation will be 42 centimeters, but since we are considering the average speed, it will only be 11.5 centimeter. So the speed for the trains which are running at a higher speed than the average, then the E that we are providing as per the equilibrium one will become deficient. Whereas for trains which are running at a lower speed than the average speed, in that case we require only, say for example 30 km per hour is the slowest train that is running in that particular section, then the super elevation required will only be 2.16 centimeter. But whereas if we are designing it for the equilibrium speed, it will be 11.5 centimeters. So for the train which is running at a slower speed, or which is running slower when compared to that of the average speed, the super elevation that we are providing will be excess. So it is very tricky which value we should provide here. So at higher speed than the average speed, the centrifugal force will not be able to counterbalance by this equilibrium super elevation that we are providing. So this may lead to overturning of vehicle where E won't be sufficient. So here in this case E become insufficient, whereas at lower speed than this average speed for which we are designing the super elevation, if the trains are running at a lower speed, the tilt of the vehicle to the inner side will be more than the centrifugal force, which again can lead to derailment. So here E will be excess. We have seen that how this super elevation is going to vary, or the design of super elevation, how it varies with the speed of the trains running in that section. Okay, so we have to make a compromise that has to be achieved by providing super elevation in a way that the faster train may travel safely without the danger of overturning, and slower train may run safely without the fear of derailment due to excessive super elevation. So if we are designing for a particular value which is in between the maximum and the minimum, then what happens for the higher speed, the chances of overturning a vehicle will be there because the super elevation becomes insufficient. Whereas for slower trains, the super elevation that we have provided in the middle way will be excess for them, and which can lead to derailment. So which speed do we need to design this another question, another challenging question. So let's consider this equilibrium speed. So some railways consider the maximum to be the equilibrium speed for which is designed. So equilibrium speed is the speed for which the super elevation is designed. Okay. So in majority of Indian railway provide E based on the equilibrium speed, which is the average speed under average condition. So how can we calculate this average speed? There are three ways of doing it. If the maximum sanction speed is more than 50 km per hour, then in that case, the average speed is considered to be 0.75 times the maximum speed. Okay, so for example, the speed of train in a broad gauge or meter gauge track is more than 50 km per hour. Say for example, it is 100 km per hour is the maximum sanction speed. Then the speed for which E is designed will be 75 km per hour or 0.75 times the maximum speed if it is more than 50 km per hour. Then if the maximum sanction speed is less than 50 km per hour, then average speed is considered to be that maximum speed. For example, in a particular route, the maximum speed which the trains are running is 45 km per hour. In that case, the average speed is considered to be Vmax. So this is one way of doing it. Another thing is we can simply take the weighted average speed to be our equilibrium speed. Okay, so it would be, say for example, there are 10 trains traveling at a speed of 60 km per hour. There will be 5 trains traveling at a speed of 50 km per hour. So we have to get the weighted average of all this using this equation. Let's do a numerical example. So what is asked here? Find the equilibrium point on a 2-degree curve. So what this 2-degree curve specifies? So from this 2-degree curve, we have to get the radius. Okay. On a broad gauge, so again gauge is specified here, broad gauge. Track is 15 trains are running at a speed of 50 km per hour. There are 10 trains traveling at a speed of 60 km per hour, 5 trains at 70 and 2 trains at a speed of 80 km per hour. So what is asked? You are asked to find the equilibrium point. And again it is specified that you have to use the weighted average speed as the equilibrium speed for calculating the equilibrium point. Okay, so equilibrium point is the point that we are designing, and the equilibrium speed is the speed for which the point is designed. What is equilibrium speed? So here it is given as the equilibrium speed to be calculated using the weighted average method. So let's do this problem. So what will be our first step? So first step is we have to calculate the average speed. Since it is weighted average, we can find that to be 15 into 50 plus 10 into 60 plus 5 into 70 plus 2 into 80 divided by total number of trains. Will give you the average speed. Then what is the equation for super elevation broad gauge? We have already derived this equation. So this much will be the super elevation in centimeter for a broad gauge. So what will be the R? Again it is a 2-degree curve. So you can use this equation for finding the corresponding radius in meters. And when substituting here, we know the value of R, we know the speed. So for this we have to put the average speed. So when substituting that, you will be getting the equilibrium point to be 5.1 centimeter. The limit of super elevation and point deficiency, as discussed in the previous sections, super elevation should be provided in such a way so as to accommodate various trains that are running with different speeds from time to time. We have to limit the value of super elevation for the safety aspect. Normally, the maximum value of super elevation according to Railway Board, Indian Railway Board is 1/10 of a gauge. For example, if you consider the broad gauge, the gauge is 1.676 meters or it is 167.6 centimeter. So what will be the maximum limiting value for super elevation broad gauge track? It will be 1/10 of it, which comes to be 16.5 centimeter. Similarly, if you consider the meter gauge, it is 100 centimeter. So 1/10 of that becomes the maximum super elevation permitted there, which becomes 10 centimeter. And in a similar way, for narrow gauge, the maximum permitted super elevation is 7.6 centimeter. So if super elevation is we are providing super elevation, then that has to be smoothly and uniformly introduced using transition curve. All of a sudden we cannot raise the outer rail with respect to the inner rail. It needs to be smoothly and uniformly introduced with the help of transition curves. So it varies 0 at the beginning of transition curve to the maximum at the junction where the transition curve meets the circular curve. So next is the concept of theoretical Kant and Kant efficiency. So as I told you, the limiting value of super elevation on Indian Railway Board is limited to 1/10 of a gauge. So as per the maximum speed, we are getting the theoretical Kant. So we have discussed in the earlier case, say for a train which is traveling at a speed of 90 km per hour, the super elevation required will be 42.6 centimeter. But it has to be limited in a broad gauge. It is 1/10 of a gauge, which becomes 16.5 centimeter. So even though the required is 42.6 centimeter as per the maximum speed, the one which we are providing will be 16.5 centimeter. So there is a difference between this maximum and the actual value that we are providing, which becomes the Kant efficiency. So here this is how much the outer rail is raised with respect to the inner rail. So the required one will be as per the speed with which the trains are running. So that will be equal to the theoretical Kant. But certain situations we cannot provide this theoretical Kant. We are forced to provide some limiting value, or the actual Kant is the one which we have introduced in the field. So sometimes this actual Kant will be varying from the theoretical Kant. So this variation is what is Kant efficiency. So the theoretical Kant, it will be the actual Kant provided plus Kant efficiency, or Kant efficiency is nothing but it's a difference between the equilibrium Kant necessary for the maximum permissible speed on a curve and the actual Kant provided. Okay. So equilibrium Kant, when equilibrium Kant is the one for which we have to design it, where the lateral forces and wheel loads are almost equal and the Kant is said to be in equilibrium. So it is provided based on the average speed of trains. So this is what we wanted to provide. This is what required there. But due to some limiting factors or due to some limiting cases, we are forced to provide a value less than that, and the one which we are introducing in the field becomes the actual Kant, and the difference between the theoretical and actual becomes the Kant efficiency. This part we will see more detail in the next video. So thank you all. That's all for today's video. So the portions that we have discussed in today's video include the various features or the various geometric design features. We have briefly discussed about the horizontal curve, the transition curve, the vertical curve. Then we have seen the different types of curves. And in the case of circular curve, we have seen the relation between the radius and the degree of the curve, and what are the limiting factors that decide the maximum degree of the curve that can be provided. Then we have moved on to the super elevation part. We have seen the necessity of providing super elevation. We have seen the derivation of a super elevation for a railway track. Then what we have discussed is the equilibrium speed. Equilibrium speed is the speed for which the super elevation is designed. So how we can fix this equilibrium speed? So mostly it is based on the average speed. Indian Railway is following the average speed concept. So there are three ways of getting this average speed that we have discussed. And later we discussed about the limiting value of super elevation and the variation between the theoretical and the limiting or the actual super elevation provided becomes the Kant efficiency. So these were the things that we discussed in today's video. So please go through it, and if any one of you have doubts regarding this, please contact me personally.